Well, welcome back to the Revealed Radio Network. Welcome back to the Revealed Report. I am your host, John Wilson. Well, today I am reading where former MSNBC host Mighty Hassan claims, "I'm just as American as anybody else." He also says that the Muslim call prayer should be rung out across the city of New York and wherever, just as much as church bells should be. I'm paraphrasing there. So let's ask the question whether Mighty Hassan is as American as we are. And then let's break down the very playbook of the Islamists as well as the Marxists, who both have the same agenda in mind and how they are trying to rot out America. Let's really break it down and see how this works. And let's show how they flip the script and wear the mask and they demonize us as if we're the intolerant ones and they're the tolerant party, when really what they're doing is trying to wreck the whole American system, which in the end will bring us a greater level of oppression, because Marxism, wherever it's been practiced, has always brought oppression, and Islam, wherever it's been practiced, has always brought oppression. The playbook is one and the same. And I hope today that Americans will begin to see it, as well as Christians, because oftentimes even people on the so-called right are gullible to buy into the lie or to say we're not the extreme conservatives or the Christians, which is just a way to get us on the slippery slope to accept their ideology. So there's a clever playbook for which they have. So let's ask the question, is Mighty Hassan as much of American as we are? Let's remember that it's Mighty Hassan who is the pro-Islam propaganda mouthpiece that was formerly on MSNBC until he couldn't keep any ratings. And now he's still out there. And the truth of the matter is he has rebranded and repackaged his language to make it less noticeable, but he is still the pro-Islam propaganda piece, and he hates Israel. Everybody that tends to not like Israel seems not to like the principles of the West. This is why the people on the so-called right can't buy into the lie, because when you get on that slippery slope, eventually you're going to turn on American Western values as well, because people that allow a little bit of leaven will begin to allow the whole thing to be leavened, the whole lump to be leavened. Lies begin to take you into greater deception. Mighty Hassan has always been a pro-Islam propaganda mouthpiece. In addition to that, he has always been an anti-American founding principles mouthpiece as well. He's pushed critical race theory. He's pushed Marxist-leaning ideology. He's always tried to push this idea that America is a system of oppressors and oppressed, and therefore we got to rot out the system from within. And they always wear the mask of tolerating and being inclusive, when really what they're doing is trying to destroy the American way and to get rid of godly principles and to begin to get people to buy into it out of sympathy. This is the playbook of the left, and we'll dive into it a little bit deeper. He claims that he's just as much American as anybody else while hating on America. And this is the problem. We allow immigration without assimilation. And we'll talk about that momentarily. But Rush Limbaugh spoke about his concern with this, that multiculturalism is a way for people to flee from oppressive ideology, bring those ideologies right into America, never assimilate to the American founding principles, and then begin to implement their oppressive ideas into our government structure. We need to reject that completely. Without assimilation, we do not have a country. I'm glad that what the American founders believed in, that we have individual rights that are inalienable rights endowed to us by our creator God. And we are to have a government ran by the people for the people, that we are to be represented by our state legislators. And there was never to be a big federal government. However, even though we have individual rights, they always believe that we should assimilate to be one people under God. We are to have common traditions and common values. We must respect the Bill of Rights. We must respect the United States Constitution. We must respect the founding of America. And you see, the radical left and the Islamists have one thing in mind: rewrite the history, demonize us conservatives that still believe in the founding principles of America. Mighty Hassan claims that Muslims have built this country as slaves. This is one of the ways that they begin to rot out our country from within. They want to say that America was built on slavery and oppression, as if the cotton fields was actually the thing that built America, when in fact it had less than 5% as much as at most of the GDP. It was the industrial revolution that actually built America. Now, did they have slaves? Yes. But do you realize that 11 of the 13 colonies was wanting to get rid of slaves? And I did a whole episode on this on a Faith and Freedom Friday edition. So you should go catch that if you didn't catch it. You'll get a great understanding of how our nation was not built on racist ideology. It was actually built with a mission statement that all men are created equal. And those founders were actually legally fighting that out, which culminated in the ending of slavery and segregation. But we see that Mighty Hassan is pushing the same lie that the CRT folks did, the critical race theorist folks did, that Nicole Hannah-Jones did with the 1619 Project, that this nation was built on slavery. And now they are expanding in that, because that's what a little bit of leaven does. It leavens the whole lump. It expands into greater lies. Not only are they saying it was built on the slavery of black people, but also Muslims as well. Muslims built this country, and therefore we are just as much American as you are. At the same time, they do not accept the founding principles of America, which was built on Christian principles. Instead, they want to push Sharia law in our world, to the point that even judges in the United States have to rule against Sharia law being exercised and implemented inside of the states of America. Texas just had a ruling on this recently. Ohio had it just a few years back. And so it's the same lie of critical race theory rebranded. Meanwhile, there are Arabic countries still practicing slave trade today. Mighty Hassan is not talking about that because he really doesn't care about that. It's not about racism. It's not about slavery. It's about destroying and uprooting the American way, the American dream, the American system. In God we trust, and a God that was built on biblical Christian principles. That's what they want to uproot. All of this is just a lie, just a package of deception to try to get gullible people, the low IQ voter, to buy into it and go along with it because it sounds noble, because it sounds good. But what they really do is they make good evil and evil good. They put light for darkness, darkness for light, and they make sweet things bitter and bitter things sweet. This is the practice of the radical left. If they really cared about racism, they would be talking about all these Arabic countries that still has slaves and still believes in a system of slavery and oppression. But it's not about any of that. Why is the pro-Islamist propaganda mouthpiece trying to tell us that America was built on oppression when Islam still believes in oppression? They still believe in all these things. You see, it's not about any of that. They begin to flip the script. That's their whole way. That's their narrative. That's what they always do. And if that doesn't work, then you have Barack Obama, who tries to make us believe that Thomas Jefferson was actually believing in Islamic ideas because he had a Quran. Well, if that's the case, then every library in America has all types of different ideologies. Every library that allows all types of different books into their system, I guess they're whacked out with all different types of ideologies. That doesn't mean anything. Many of us have books that we don't even agree with. I got liberal leftist books over here sitting to my right, people I actually vehemently disagree with, but I have their books. You know why I read their books? So I understand where they're coming from. So I understand the root of their ideology. Thomas Jefferson did not believe in Islamic ideology. As a matter of fact, the reason why he had the Quran is because 30%, almost 30% of the federal budget was being spent to try to get our American hostages back from the Islamists that was capturing them. When the Navy song about the shores of Tripoli back 1812, and that is because on the shores of Tripoli, the Islamists were capturing American hostages, and we were having to spend almost 30% of the federal budget to try to get them back. General George Washington, that became the first president of the United States, he actually wanted to go over there and just fight them off. General George Washington became the first president of the United States. He didn't have much tolerance for it because he thought it was absolutely an oppressive system, and they were fighting against oppressive ideology. They believed in people having individual sovereign rights endowed to us by our creator God. He's seen the oppression of them. He also had to go get the American hostages back from these people that had no problem capturing them and making them slaves. And yet we're supposed to believe Mighty Hassan that he is just as much American as us, and that America is the oppressive system. In addition to that, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams actually went over there to try to negotiate with them. And when they went over there, they said these guys are crazy, because at that time they were putting knives in their mouth and they were acting insane as an intimidation factor against Americans. They thought it was absolutely radical. So Thomas Jefferson was like, I got to understand, what is the root of their thinking? What is the ideology? Where is this all coming from? So he ended up getting a Quran and he began to study it. And he even pinned down the notes in the front of that thing about how crazy he thought it was. So America was not built on Islamic ideology, no matter what the radical left wants to say, no matter what the pro-Islamic propagandists want to say. And if it's not bad enough that it's coming from the radical left, then you got so-called conservatives on the right that are nothing more than grifters for clickbait. You have Tucker, I like what Mark Levin calls him, Katarson. And you also have Candace Owens, Jihadi Candy Owens, that is supporting the very Hamas side more than they are supporting the Jews. As a matter of fact, Jihadi Candy says that Trump is Israel, Bibi's puppet, and he's fighting Israel's wars, and that he's just bowing down to Bibi. And she's calling for regime change in Israel before Hamas has regime change. How radical is that? And it's amazing to me that all the people that lean left tend to be on the side of being against Israel. When you have Canada, leftists, when you have the UK, leftists, and they all come together to recognize a Palestinian state, which would actually make the war continue to go on, because that's telling the Palestinian people to side with your leadership, Hamas, even because you're winning the PR game, and Hamas is obviously winning the war then in the general public's eyes. And that was to go wildly in the face of Trump, who was actually brokering deals to try to bring a peace deal. Now, isn't it amazing to me that all the left-leaning tend to go and side with Hamas against Israel? And then you have grifters on the right, because the radical left has called us conspiracy theorists, and to the point that we question government on everything, that now they are beginning to use that vacuum void just to push more actual conspiracy theories to get clickbait. And so now I see that Jihadi Candy seems to be going into a sabbatical. I don't know what that's all about. Maybe vacation, or maybe the heat's actually on because of all the legal lawsuits, because of all the lies that she's been spreading. So you see that there's a Marxist-Islamist playbook that unites them together with one common enemy, and that's the ideas of the West. That's America, and that's Islam. And you find that, I always forget his name, Mighty Hassan, he's saying that the very Muslim prayer call should be played out across New York, across all over the place, because there's church bells. And because there's church bells, we ought to have our Muslim prayer going across intercoms outward. And I know people will try to use the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the articles, the founding documents, and try to support this. The problem is that is a sign of victory to the radical left and to the Islamists. That is a sign that they are taking territory. And that's what the Islamists actually believe. They believe that when they take territory and they get a victory, that they need to put a mosque over the top of that they need to take that territory. That's why they want to put it over there, which was the place where Abraham once was going to sacrifice Isaac, is where the temple was built by Solomon. That's why they want that, because that's a sign of victory. And they want to put a mosque on top of it so that they show that they're victorious. And that's what they're trying to do in the United States of America. Why do you think they put a mosque right there on ground zero of where 9/11 took place? Because that is a symbol of victory. And yet people will twist the Constitution and the Bill of Rights to say, well, they have their freedom of religion. But you have to understand, the founders of America never even recognized Islam. They didn't believe in Islamist ideology. As a matter of fact, they were against that ideology. Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, George Washington, they were against the Islamist ideology. That wasn't even a part of the equation. And I would imagine that if it would have been prominent at the time of the Constitution, then they would have been pushing against it. But that wasn't a threat in America at that time. The only threat that is the hostages that they were taking, American hostages over by the shores of Tripoli. That was the only threat that was taking place from radical Islam at the time. They would have never supported it because they believed in the principles of the Bible. Matter of fact, Patrick Henry quoted the Bible when he gave his famous speech, "Give me liberty or give me death." It was Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, and that said it must be built on a virtuous people. It must be built on the 10 commandments of God, nothing of the Quran, nothing of Islam. They would have never allowed Sharia law in our nation because Sharia law goes wildly in defiance of the very Declaration of Independence. It is an oppressive system, which is what we were throwing off when we came from Great Britain and we began to throw off Great Britain's rule and their boot over our neck. So Barack Obama was lying as he was pushing CRT. We find that Mighty Hassan lies as he pushes another branding of CRT and says that Muslims built this country alongside black people because it was built on slavery, when actually America boomed in the Industrial Revolution, and it boomed because of godly Christian principles. They believed that our blessing came from the God of the Bible, not from Allah, not from the Quran, not through the Prophet Muhammad. And so we have the right to ring out our church bells because that is what America was built upon. It wasn't built on a sound that sounds like an Arabic Mecca world. And now there's even a Republican that is in trouble, Republican congressman from NDTV World News. The article says, go back to the UK, U.S. Congressman to journalist Mighty Hassan on Islamic prayer call. This began when Mighty Hassan, editor-in-chief of Zetio, addressed American Christians saying, if you can play your church bell, you can play the call to prayer. We are American as anyone else. U.S. Congressman Brandon Gill has come under massive criticism for asking Mighty Hassan to go back to the UK after the British-American journalist defended the Islamic prayer call in America. This began when Hassan, editor-in-chief and CEO of Zetio, addressed American Christians saying, if you can play your church bell, you can play the call to prayer. We are as American as anyone else. Gill responded on X by mocking the former Al Jazeera host, writing within quotes, we can move here in masse and fundamentally transform the landscape of American public life. Hassan then pointed out Gill's connection to immigrant families, writing, your wife is an Indian American, the daughter of an Indian immigrant. Gill replied, my wife is a Christian and doesn't want to hear your oppressive Muslim prayer calls either. If you want to live in a Muslim country, go back to the UK, end quote, which was really a slap at the UK. And the reason why it was a slap at the UK is because the UK has a massive problem. They're having to deal with the Islamic ideology that's trying to uproot their system because they have complete open borders and they allowed all this come in, and these people immigrate and they don't assimilate to their culture and they want to rot it out within. And that's exactly what was happening under the former president, Joe Biden, as he was allowing the open borders, and they just rush in without assimilation. They don't want to assimilate to the American culture. They want to uproot the American culture. So he was really mocking the UK while he was mocking Mighty Hassan. Now he's coming under fire because that's what they do. They call that hate speech. They call it violent rhetoric or whatever else. But the radical left can say whatever they want. They can celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk, but we say that we don't want our nation to be an Islamic nation. Go back to the UK where they allow that. Don't bring it here. And yet then we come under attack because we come under all types of slanderous things because they say you're just being a hateful bigot. No, America was built on Christian principles, and that's what we want to keep it as. It wasn't built on humanism. It wasn't built on Islamism. And you have the right to argue out. So do we. We all can come to the table reasoning. We all can debate it out. We can debate it passionately, and we do respect you, but we are going to try to destroy your ideology that's trying to destroy America. You have the right to try. We have the right to try. And so we don't care if you want to bring us under assault. That doesn't intimidate us, not at least not some of us. Do whatever you want. But we believe that America was built on Christian principles, and that brings the greatest liberty because all men are created equal with these certain inalienable rights endowed to us by our Creator God, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That was built on Christian principles, not Islamist principles. If you allow Islamic ideology to come in, you'll lose all those principles. They want to use the Constitution while they erode away the Constitution. They want to say they're fighting for freedom of religion, when in the end, what happens is they want to run Christianity out because Islam is not going to say that we're going to make an agreement that you can be Christian, we can be Islam. Must go down into Nigeria and see how well that's working as Islam is trying to press its way and take over the whole entire country there. They're not satisfied, just like the radical left is not satisfied with shaking hands and compromising. They want to take as much territory as possible. And the moment we try to defend the principles of America, they want to call us hateful. They want to call us bigots. They want to say all of this. The way I say it is we are in a political, spiritual, and ideological war, and everybody has the right to the battlefield of ideas. And let's see who wins, because whose ideas wins is going to be the ideas that influence our country. And the last I seen, the radical left and the Islamists are trying to tear our country down. It's more oppressive when we get a radical leftist in that also sides with Islamist nature. Everything becomes more oppressive. All of a sudden, they use big tech to try to silence our speech on Facebook and social media and Instagram and X, and try to shut down our podcast and all of that. You don't have that from the Christians as much as you have that from all the radical leftists. We're not trying to force you out. We're just trying to beat your ideas because we don't believe in them, and we have the right not to believe in them. As a matter of fact, they forced gender ideology on us. And if you don't go along with that, just ask the very Massachusetts family that the foster parents that would not sign an agreement for gender affirming affirmation. They wouldn't do it. And because of that, their license to be foster parents was revoked. They're not satisfied with allowing you to have your Christian convictions. They want you to buy into their ideas or else. It's an oppressive system. And yet the whole time they say that they're trying to defend the Constitution while they're actually in the end trying to nuke the Constitution down. That's the clever playbook from the radical left and the Islamists. What they try to do is immigrate into our country, never assimilate to our ideas, rewrite our history. And then they have the radicals that begin to use violence, actual, sure, pure violence in the streets against people so that they can use the peaceful ones and get us to buy into the peaceful movement. That's the idea. It's the top down, bottom up approach. Heat the things up in the streets, then get your lying peaceful ones at the top and let us go, well, we're not okay with the radicals, but we're okay with the peaceful ones when the end result is the same. The radical left says, you know what, we're going to have the radical Antifa in the streets. And then all of a sudden you'll have the ones that seem more civil so that you turn away from the radicals and you buy into the ones that are civil. They're trying to get the same end goal. It is a playbook. It is a tactic to try to get us to buy in when the end result is still radical leftism. The Muslims, the Islamists do the same thing. You don't buy into radical Islam, but then we buy into the peaceful ones. And then after 9/11, you know what happened? After radical jihadists began to attack our nation by flying in the planes into the Twin Towers and made an assault and attack on our nation, then all of a sudden the Republicans on the right who are too cowardice go out and say, well, you know, we gotta understand this is radical Islam. And so then we buy into the peaceful movement, which the end result is to flip the whole system inside out. The radical left uses this playbook. The Islamists use this playbook. This is the idea. Come into our country, don't assimilate to our ideas, rewrite the history book, and then use the radicals to turn our heart away from the radicals so that the peaceful, civilized ones say, come here. We're not like the radicals. Come here. We're more civil. We're more peaceful. Then we buy into their ideas and we let them infiltrate into our some of our pulpits. We let them infiltrate into our education system. We let them infiltrate into politics. We let them infiltrate into the higher education of learning. We let them infiltrate the corporate American world. And in the end result, it's the same thing as what the radicals want. Now, the problem is the conservative right are too cowardice to say it because we feel like, well, we're going to get canceled. Well, the problem is we don't speak out against it because we want to make everybody think, okay, well, we're the what was the term that Bush said? We are the compassionate Republicans. What he meant is that he's a coward. He doesn't just want to call it out for what it is. Radical Islam and Marxists are coming together and it's an antichrist spirit to uproot not only the U.S., but uproot godly principles. They want to put a mosque everywhere they can as a sign of victory in our nation. And then they want the Arabic Mecca call to go across our country. You think that's just them wanting to coexist with us like the radical left wants to put on their back bumpers with their sticker? They just want to coexist with us? No, they don't want to coexist with us. They want to take over our country. And so does the radical left. Now, the funny thing is, the radical left and the Islamists don't agree on anything at all. It's like the queers for Palestine. How much sense does that make? Go over there once, see how well that works. They don't get along with anything. The only thing they agree on is the common enemy. They hate Israel, they hate America, they hate the West. And if they ever get that wish, because they will mutually use one another for the destruction of the West. And when it's all said and done, they'll turn on each other because they don't agree with each other. They don't like one another. They just use one another for the destruction of the West. And it's so sad and pathetic that now in New York City, you got Andrew killed grandma in the nursing home, Cuomo, and Zoran Mondani, who is the embodiment of Islam and Marxism together to try to uproot the very ideologies of any godly principles and any Christian principles and any American founding principles in New York City, exactly where the Twin Towers happened. Why do you think that is? Is because Islamists really believe in taking territory because it's victory to them. In the end, they want the world practicing Sharia law. In one form or another, they want to take over all of the West. Why do you think UK is having so much problems with the Islamic movement in their nation? And tell me again why Trump shouldn't be closing the border. Honestly, we are riding by the grace of God. We haven't had another 9/11 attack in America. And why can't we speak that way? Why can't we just call it out for what it is? Why do we have to hide in a corner? Let them say whatever they want against our nation, and we can't speak out. How come they can talk about America being evil, but we can't talk about the dangers of Islam? How come they can demonize all of us, but we can't say that we don't want Muslim ideology taking over our colleges, taking over our education system, taking over our schools, taking over our politicians, taking over our corporations? Why can't we say that? Why do they get the right to say it, but we don't get the right to say it? I'll tell you what that is. It's the clever playbook. It's a two-tier justice system, and it's a two-tier system of saying what you can't say it, but we can. Why? Because that's the way to silence us so they take more territory. They don't care that they're hypocrites. It doesn't matter because both sides, the Islamists and the Marxists, have no problem lying for the cause of pushing their agenda. And Islam, Tahiyya, they'll lie to infidels for the sake of pushing Sharia law in all the world. Marxists lie too. They rewrite our history, taking history by sound bites, and they lie to us for the cause of pushing Marxism ideology in all of the U.S. and the world. It's the same exact playbook. Immigrate without assimilation, rewrite the history book, use the radicals to get you to buy into the peaceful movement with the same end result: flip the system, erode away America, and get us turned into something we were never designed to be. So I'm sorry, Mighty Hassan, and I hope the congressman doesn't bow a knee to the pressure. We're not going to. Mighty Hassan, you are not as American as me, and it doesn't matter about the color of your skin. It's your evil ideology. Your ideology is oppressive. We're not oppressive by believing in American founding principles because this brought the greatest liberty and freedom in the world. It brought the greatest opportunity. Why is it that Americans aren't fleeing into those countries? Why are they fleeing into our country if we're so bad, Mighty Hassan? How come you don't speak about the Arabic countries that are still practicing slavery? Why aren't you? Because you're a hypocrite. You don't care about that. You care about destroying our country and tearing out the Bible out of our country. That's all that is. That's all it is. And as long as the conservative side of the aisle are too cowardice to speak out and say something, we're going to keep getting the issue. It's going to keep rising up. It's going to keep trying to take territory in our country. And so we need people that will cry loud and spare not. Mighty Hassan, until you start speaking out against all the other slave-holding countries of the world, until you start talking about the oppressive ideology under Islam, we don't care about you talking about America. And no, you're not as American as us because you don't believe in the founding principles of America. Doesn't matter what color your skin is. It matters whether you assimilate to the traditions and the founding principles of America. That's what makes you American. We like people to come in legally. We like people to come in, but they must assimilate to the founding principles of America. If you don't want that, there's plenty of other places where you can get your ideology. You're not going over there. because you want to destroy the American way. That's all that's about. And I believe it's time for Christians and conservatives to stand up, quit buying into the lies. They've been lying to us time and time and time and time again. And the very way they do it is try to play on our good character. We want to be civil. Yes, we will be civil, but that doesn't mean I have to embrace their ideology. And it doesn't mean I can't speak out against it. America was not founded on Sharia law. America was not founded on the Quran. It was founded on the Bible. And it's time that we're not afraid of the pitchfork mob of our day. And it's time that we stand up and speak as well. America, I'm praying that we'll come back to some civilization. Oh, by the way, we have some great announcements. We have added some podcasts. If you haven't caught it, they're less political and more theological and Bible-based. So you might like it better, some of you. Strength to Carry Through with Kayla Skinner aired on Monday at 4:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. It'll be on every Monday at 4:30 Central Standard Time. Every Monday at 4:30 Central Standard Time, excuse me. And then on Tuesdays, it is the Firm Foundation with Austin Skinner. And then this Saturday is the debut of the Biblical American Kids podcast with Camden J. Wilson. That will air at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time on Saturday morning, 10 a.m. And then Get in the Game with Jesus with Levi Wilson at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. We will have the Revealed Kids bedtime stories at 8 p.m. this Saturday, Central Standard Time. And then October 31st is the release of the Revealed Kids bedtime stories book. And then November 1st is the release of two more books of my own, A Living Sacrifice, God's Blueprint for Revival, and Blessed and Broke, How a Nation traded God for debt, pretty much. How a Nation lost God and gained debt. That was the subtitle of it. And then tomorrow night is the Oracle podcast with myself. I will be diving into the Revelation chapter number 4. If you like Bible content, join me tomorrow night on the Oracle podcast at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Also, in addition to that, maybe you've realized that the Revealed Report has expanded, and now we have the Revealed Morning Report, which airs at 8:30 p.m. every morning, Central Standard Time. And then at 10 p.m. Central Standard Time, we have a nightly prayer over America and the nightly sign-on. And it's kind of reminiscent to the America that was around when I was a kid. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are, American? When it was patriotic and it was God-centered and people actually loved our country. America, the church will be standing tomorrow because Jesus said, upon this rock, the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. But if the republic has not totally burned down by tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow. God bless you. Have a great night.